Okay guys, this is another great video from Computer Copilot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a business card, and I'm going to show you how to make a business card. The first thing that you're going to want to do is get the sizing right. There's a couple different ways to do it, but I'm going to go to the canvas size, and as you can see, by the way, I'm using Photoshop CS6. So as you can see, the size that I have is 3.627 by 2.127. The business card itself is going to be 3.5 by 2. I've added 0.125 on both of these, but for some reason when you add 125 it changes to 7. So let's see, 625. So this is the size, so it's 3.5 plus 125. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And as you can see, I've added these guides as well. Now the guides just help me for crop marks, bleeding, all of that kind of stuff. And I'll show you how to take that off. But essentially the first thing that you do is you can go to your view and you can clear your guides or you can lock them. To get a guide, you just hover over where your rulers are. Now if you don't have your rulers showing, if it looks like this, I'm on an Apple, you can hit Command R and it'll bring the rulers in, or you can go to View and Rulers. And there you see, now I have my rulers. When I click on the ruler, you can see it brings a guide. If I lock the guides, then the guides will be locked and I can't move them. The other thing is if you click in this corner and drag, this will line your rulers up in case your ruler's not lined up when you look at it. So this one's off just a little bit. So you can see now I have my 0.125, and also if it's showing up in pixels, sometimes it might show up as in pixels, and this is helpful if you're using doing web work and you know how many pixels wide by pixels high, but we're doing print and business cards, so we're going to stick with inches. And all I'm doing to get that is right clicking on the ruler and hitting inches. So there I have my inches and information right there. So the first thing that I'm going to do in building this business card, and again this is how I build a business card, but when I'm doing print you have to make sure that it's CMYK rather than RGB. RGB looks great for web, but when you print it, it looks dull. So the other thing to make sure is when you are in setting up a new document that the color mode is changed from RGB to CMYK. And that's really important so that your colors turn out right. Your blacks are black instead of gray. Your reds are red instead of a washed out, dull looking color. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to build a business card for myself. So I have my canvas and I have everything ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and hit a new layer, and on this new layer I'm going to choose the color palette, and from here I'm just going to do a black. Now I could do all zeros and that would give a black, but that's not a rich black, it's a flat black. So I'm doing just with the color picker, dragging it clear in the back, and I'm going to go ahead and click it. I'm going to hit OK. Now there's a couple different ways that you can do a background. I'm just going to use the paint bucket and I'm going to click. So now I have a black background. But what I want to do is I want to have a gradient on this black background. Now there's a couple different ways that I can do a gradient. I can click and hold down and use the gradient tool, and then if I click up here I can choose, and then I'm going to click on this and I can choose the color. So my gradient can be gray, and that still may be just a little too light, so I'll bring it down here to about right there. And now what I can do is, if you can see, I have all these different options to drag a gradient. So this is one way, and I'm going to click right there and drag. Now it didn't do what I wanted. This should have been light and this should have been dark. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to click on this and I'm going to slide this over, and I'm going to move this out of the way. Now I should have it. Oh, I need to reverse it. So I'm going to hit reverse. Now I'm going to click and drag. And that looks pretty good, but it's way, and all I'm doing is just drag in different lengths and different angles to see, but the gray is way too light. So I'm going to go back into here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to click and go almost a charcoal color. That looks a lot better. So now I'm going to do just a little bit, about right there, looks good. Now I've already, in another video, and I'll show that, but I've already cleaned out a picture of myself. So I'm going to find that picture, and I believe it's in Dropbox. So go ahead and open it up. So here I am. Yeah. Now here's the original picture right here. So that's the original, and you can see there's shadows, there's all kinds of things that need to be fixed on it. So what I'm going to do is really quickly I'll show you how to cut that stuff out and to do it pretty fast. So now again, there's a lot of different ways to use Photoshop, and this is just how I use it. I'm going to click the magic wand tool, and I'm going to have the tolerance up to about 25, and you can see that it's just a little too much, so I'm going to drop it to 15. And what the tolerance does is it's for how much it'll select, and that's a little closer. There's obviously some spots that need to be fixed. So I'm going to get in a little bit closer, and you can see and again, this is just a real quick way, and I'm going to do a couple other things to bring it in and make it a little bit better. And if you select something and you didn't mean to and it went down too much, if you hold the Option key, it'll unselect where you were. So I'm going to go ahead and I always make another copy, so I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. And I copied and pasted, and it just took the outside. So make sure that you inverse. Oh, and I messed up, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to make sure my magic wand is, this is the history, magic wand. And I'm going to do Shift Command I to inverse it, and now I'll hit copy and paste, and as you can see now I just copied and pasted that. Now it's still pretty rough, and I don't want it that bad, so I'll go back into my history, magic wand, and I'm going to subtract these out, even if I have to go back in a little bit later. But they just don't, they're not quite, I don't want to have to fix my shirt. It's easier to take it in. So that's pretty close. Go ahead and select that again. Undo right there. And we'll add right here, actually a little minus. If you can't see it, I'll zoom in here so you can see I'm hitting the option to give me the subtract selection area. Okay, so I'm zoomed out. Now I only have that area selected, so I'm going to hit plus, and I'm having issues with it, so I'm going to adjust the tolerance just a little bit more. And so now what I'm going to do, there we go, that gives me a little bit better. And I have to still clean it up a little bit, but it's not into my shirt as bad. So here we go. And there we go. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and, again, Shift Command I, and make sure I do copy instead of cut. And now I've done another one. Now the other way to do this, rather than really mess with it, I'm going to get the polygon lasso tool, and from here I'm just going to click. And make sure when you're doing this that, and I'll just hit delete on that. There's a couple other ways you can do this too, and like I said, there's all different ways. I can create a mask, and from that mask I can paint, which a lot of people do. I do it like this just because it's faster. You can also use the eraser and do it that way, but for me, the other thing is if you want it, it's a little softer, you can add a little bit of a feather to it. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to keep it like that. This is pretty good for what I'm doing. It's print. It's definitely not going to print as crisp as this picture is. The picture is actually pretty big file. Now, so I've got that, and I'm just kind of cleaning up the area. Go ahead and delete that. I'm going to zoom back out, and I've got a couple areas. I'm just going to use the clone tool, and I'm going to fix some of this. So all I'm doing now is to move it, I'm just holding the space bar, and I'm just going to copy a piece of my shirt, and I'll do the same right here. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller now. I'm just going to grab a piece of my shirt, just enough, and all I'm doing is holding down again the option to select the part that I want to use the clone tool for. Okay, that looks good enough. So I've done all of that. I'm going to grab my eraser. I'm going to, with the open brackets, delete a little bit more of this stuff, and I'm going to zoom in again, and I'm going to use the polygon lasso tool. Now obviously I'm doing this, if you're really wanting it to look good, you'd spend a little bit more time, but just for time on the video, I'm going to speed it up. So I've done all of that. I'm going to go back, and there we go. That is looking pretty good. I'm going to just take a chunk out right here. Okay, so there we go. That is the card. Now my coloring is a little bit off, but we'll work on that after. So I'm going to just move this over and drag this new layer on there, and you can see the business card is, my picture is way too big for that, so I'm going to transform, and the way I'm doing that is by holding Command and T, and then I'm just holding down Shift so that it transforms proportionately, and I'll bring it up there and right there. And now remember, it's got crop marks, so it'll crop me. So I want to make sure I'm in there pretty good. Now I'll go ahead and hit that and apply. And that looks pretty good. Now you can see there's a lot of little teeny specks and stuff like that. So let's grab the erase tool, and I'll clean that up. Now you can also see that my hair has a little bit of issue there. So I'm going to hold down over the layer, and I'm going to hold Command, and I'm going to click on it, and it will auto select that layer. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Selection, Modify, and I'm going to contract. And I'm going to contract it by 2 pixels and hit OK. Now I just brought it in a little bit. I actually went in a little bit more than I wanted, so I'm going to do that again. I'm going to click, Select, Modify, Contract, and I'm going to do 1 pixel. And that looks pretty good. Now I'm going to hold Shift, Command, I, and delete. And that just got rid of all the extra stuff around me. You can still see there's some issues, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. And again, just for time's sake, I'm not spending a ton of time on this, but just enough for you to see how it can look. So clean up some of this area. I really like the polygon lasso tool. A lot of people like using a clipping mask or a mask so that you can just hit delete and it'll go back. I don't really care. So I've got now I'm using my clone tool. I'm going to just clone a little bit, because this is, again, so close. And I'll use my eraser, and I'm going to erase just a bit there. Use my clone tool again, and there we go. That looks a lot better. So now that's pretty good. I'm going to add, actually I'm going to zoom in again. Use my tool, and there's just a little bit right there that needs to be cleaned up. So I'm going to go ahead and just erase that. And I got a couple little pieces right in here. Now again, I could use the polygon lasso tool, but this looks good enough. And my ears are a little bit funky, so there we go. And this has a little bit of an issue, so I'm going to go ahead and make the brush a little bigger. Same thing, all I'm doing is just smoothing this out with the clone tool. There we go. That looks a lot better. So we've got that. Now I want to adjust my color a little bit so that, because I'm really red and this is black and gray, so I want to kind of go with a just a little bit of a different color. So now there's a couple different ways that you can do it. If you hold down Command U, it will bring up hue and saturation. I'll go ahead and do the same thing under Image, Adjustments, Hue and Saturation. So now I can take just the reds and take the reds down a little bit, or I can do the master and bring all of it down just a little. That looks pretty good. Now, a lot of people, you know, you may want to add some, you can see now there's a total difference, but this kind of matches more of the card. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my information in. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Joe Eves. There's my name, and I'm just using the type tool, Joe Eves. Then I'm going to hold down Option with the pointer selected, and I'm just going to drag Joe Eves. That's going to create another layer, another copy, and I'm going to put Realtor, and then Option R for the Realtor sign, and I'm going to use my text and bring that down just a little, and this right here will slide it up. So there we go. Now I have my Realtor, and that looks pretty good. Then I'm going to put my number. And there's my number. And then my web address. So all I'm doing again is just holding down Option and dragging them. And there we go. We've got all of my information. So that looks pretty good. And I'm sorting through layers. I've created new layers for each of those, but all I'm doing is holding down Command and clicking on the layers, and then it auto selects. So you can see if I click on it, I'll click on the Realtor with the Command button, and it moves to that layer. But you can also turn this auto select on, and any layer you click on, it will automatically go there. But the problem is if you misclick and then you try to move something, it's a pain in the butt. So I don't use that. I just hold down Command and select. So I have that. Go ahead and put that in there like that. Same thing, phone number, and there we go. Now I need a logo. I've got an old business card, so I'll pull that open right now. Here's my old card, and I'm going to use the logo. Now if you have a logo, you're going to want to put that on there. So here's my logo and information. Oh, I forgot my address and everything, so I'm going to go ahead and put my address. We'll put that right there, and we'll shift everything else up. Now again, this is kind of cheating because I already had a business card, but if you use what I'm showing you, at least you'll be able to start and type in your own information on there. So I've got all that information. Now I'm going to go ahead and change this font to, I don't want Times New Roman, your Gotham book. That looks pretty good. And then I'm going to use my type tool and delete that. So there we go. I've got my information. Now I'm going to put my email, or because I need an email on there, so I'll go ahead and do my email. And I got my email. So now I've got my email, I have my phone number, I've got my address, all the information, and there we go. I'm going to go ahead and make this just a little bit smaller. So it kind of lines up with that. So there you go. Now this is too bright. Okay, it totally wipes out everything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my eyedrop tool and I'm going to pick that color and I'm going to try it with that. And that looks a lot better. So I'm going to do the same thing. And same here. Now you can also do a color overlay, so you could change the colors a little easier if you want. And the way you do a color overlay is when you're on the layer, so I'm on the layer over here, you go down to Effects, Color Overlay, click on it, and then you can click that color, and now it has an effect of the color overlay. So there we go. The only thing that I may want to change is my name, so I'll go ahead and do a color overlay, and I want my name to be a little bit brighter, and maybe realtor a little bit brighter. So now I want to use that same thing. I'm going to right click on my name and I'm going to hit copy layer style, and I'm going to click on realtor and right click and paste layer style. So now my information is the same. And there you go. On a side note, if you want to change the way you look a little bit, sometimes, oh, the other thing too is to make sure that you save your work often. So I'm going to go ahead and save it. I've got my information saved, but if you want to adjust yourself a little bit, here's a little, because I'm kind of chunky right in here, so one of the things you can do is you can go to filter, liquify, and in here we'll go ahead, in here you can click and we'll bring the brush size up a little bit, and I'll push this in. That's just, I didn't tuck my shirt in, okay? It's not that I'm chunky or anything. Okay, maybe that might be a little bit. But anyway, so there you go. If you want to do that, the other thing you can do, zoom in and maybe adjust the, now this is a trade secret, okay? Anybody photoshops himself, right? Okay, I'm going to use the brush size of 100. That's way too big still. I'm going to do 50. And you can bring in a little of that without messing up too much stuff. So that, do okay, there you go. Now you just made a couple little changes. Here's before, after. It just adds a little bit to what you're doing. The other thing is maybe this gradient isn't exactly where I want it, so I'm going to do another way of doing a gradient, which is a gradient overlay. In the gradient overlay, I'm going to choose the colors again. Go ahead and go with dark. And I'm going to do a little darker still. And I need to make sure that, okay, so this looks good. What I'm going to do is instead of a linear, I'm going to do a radial. And then you click and drag over there. And hit OK. Now I have a gradient overlay rather than just using this and dragging it. It gives you a little bit more control, but as you see, that looks pretty good. The only other thing I want to do is I want to make a watermark in the background, so I'm going to command click, so I've got my logo, and inside the logo I'm going to hold option down and drag it. So I've just copied it, triple click on the text to get rid of the text. Now I have a logo copy right here. I'm going to get rid of real estate, so I'm going to delete that layer, and I'm going to take the logo copy, and I'm going to bring it down behind me. So now on the layer, it's behind me. I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to make it a lot bigger. That looks pretty good. So it's the background's right there. Now I'm going to take the opacity and I'm going to bring it way down. And there we go. Go ahead and save it again. Make sure you always save as frequently as you can. That is how you make a business card. It's pretty fast, but it's very effective. I will make more videos on how to create postcards and do other videos, but I did want to put this on here. It's really fast. If I need to go slower, please comment that I need to go slower. But I just wanted to show how I put a business card together, and we did it fairly quickly. There's a lot of other things that you can do, but this at least gives you an idea of how to put together a business card. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, subscribe. If you want to know how to do something, email me or comment below on what you'd like to see a video with Photoshop on how to create some type of print, brochure, logo design, any of that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys.